Good evening. We're on the air once again with another episode of Pachios on the News. And tonight, I think you're going to find this very interesting. We have the mayor of Portland here, Mark Dion, and all of you live in Greater Portland. Some live a little further than Greater Portland, but this is our city. Those of you who may live in Scarborough or Wyndham, this is your city too. And so I always think it is important, and frankly, I'm curious of what's going on politically and with the government in the city of Portland, and what are the issues. And we have a very articulate spokesman for our city, the mayor, Mayor Dion. You'll be able to tell somewhere along the line in this interview that I'm a fan of his. I'm a fan of his beginning with his background, because he's seen it all. And he is a lawyer, and he's a very good lawyer. He was a policeman in the city of Portland. He was deputy chief of police in Portland. He was Cumberland County sheriff. So he brings a lot to the office of mayor, a lot of experience, multi-dimensional experience. And so his view of things, and he gets along with people, let me just say, he gets along with everybody very well, which is very important for a mayor. So, Mark, after I praised you like this, say you're happy to be on the show.
God, I was feeling pretty good there, Harold. Thanks for having me on.
So, I want to go over the speech you gave to the council, and I guess it was seen by a lot of people, on the annual State of the City address. Every year you do this at the end of the year?
Yes, I do. It's kind of a recap of where we've been and hopefully signals what we might do in the coming legislative year.
So I noticed in this one, you begin by warning everybody things could get tough, because in America today, the power to raise money is mostly with the federal government. You know, we get the property taxes locally, but the power to raise money to do things that citizens want done in their cities, that power to raise that money is in the federal government, and you're dependent on assistance from the federal government. Is that fair to say?
Oh, that's very fair to say, and that's why I wanted people to be put on notice that those streams of revenue could diminish, and that's going to require states and municipalities to make policy decisions recognizing there's a reduction in resources. We don't think about the federal government very much on a day-to-day level, other than what we see on the news. But a lot of services and the sustainability of non-for-profits and government agencies starts with a federal dollar, and then the state legislature is asked to supplement that. But now the push down, the state might recover more nimbly, but I think municipalities see immediate reductions in services. So I just wanted the residents of Portland to know that there are always challenges to a budget, but this erratic, unfocused federal administration that we're going through in terms of experience is making it that much more difficult.
So what kind of things that the city does could be affected by this erratic method of dealing with things in Washington?
Well, what the current administration has done, I mean, there are reductions in public health, reductions in support services for school activities to deal with challenged communities that are served in the school system. But I think what's been more challenging or problematic is this administration has grown fond of saying, here's money for the airport, but here's an attachment, and you have to swear allegiance that you will carry out these social policies in order to secure the money. And that was the case with the Portland Jetport, and the council rejected that attachment. But that makes a difficult decision. First, you have to consider the legal consequence of refusing it. You have to anticipate how the federal government will react to our refusal, and will that lead to some sort of court challenge. So, as a lawyer, I try not to be one as mayor. I have a legal team, and when we've looked at each of the executive orders that have come forward, they're just chaotic. It's chaotic essay writing by somebody in the White House. It often doesn't make sense or has contradictory elements in the document. So you sit there and go, what exactly are they trying to accomplish here? And that's been an added burden that prior municipal administrations haven't had to deal with.
To be fair, the conservatives would say, well, when the Democrats were in office, we got these grants at the local level, and they said, well, you have to be careful about DEI, and you have to be careful about racial quotas and things of that sort. That's what they would say. Is that true?
I can't refute that.
Yeah.
I think that is the case, but I think this is much more animated. It feels like you're taking a loyalty oath to the perspective of a federal government. I mean, I experienced the days where you had to sign off and say you had a safe drug policy, in order to make sure your employees weren't impaired, that you were providing them services if they would. I think that that's appropriate. It didn't interfere with government, didn't say, and if you don't do this, we'll take additional actions. Like they accused us of being a sanctuary city. There's nothing in policy or historic ordinances that we've assumed that status. So they put us on the list. Everybody went into hyper panic. What does this mean? And I decided with the counselors to take a wait and see attitude. And they were a little anxious about that. And then, lo and behold, the national sheriff stepped forward and said, we won't stand for this because you're accusing sheriffs of being sanctuary officials because of the way they manage prisoners. So they withdrew it. We went on the list quick, and we left as quickly.
So Portland's no longer looked at as a sanctuary city?
Not this week. And that underscores our current relationship with the federal government. It's not predictable. And I mean, it has nothing to do with Republicans per se. I've worked as an executive officer under the Bush administrations. Yep. They definitely had an agenda, but there was clarity. The expectations were as they were, and the atmosphere didn't feel punitive. Yeah. It just suggested that the chief executive was inclined to take the country in a certain way, right. And they were looking for our partnership, and that was the important thing. I think now they're looking for our submission, and that's an entirely different context.
Dominance seems to be the word of the day.
Like they need to relax and take a deep breath.
Yeah, I'm in charge, and this is what you're going to do, and if you don't, you'll be sorry.
Yeah, that's pretty much the tone. I mean, ordering people to submit or adopt is always the hardest way to get anything done.
So in your, so you talk about in your State of the City about what's to come, programs may disappear, and you point out that we do have vulnerable people in the city, as all cities do, people that society just can't ignore them. That, in fact, as a society, if we want an ordered society, it requires that we try to take care of people and help them get better and help them get on their feet. And you're worried that that's going away?
Yes, I am worried that there's going to be a significant retreat from healthcare support. We're seeing that emerging now as far as the Obama-era care plans, insurance plans. But it's Medicare, Medicaid, if those are reduced. These are individuals who, but for that support, cannot access care. So what's going to happen? Nobody talks about the backside of the math. So you pull that away. You feel, I've made a victory, I'm reducing costs. Well, you're not. Those individuals will still be ill, will still need medical attention. So now they become charity cases at local hospitals. And though local hospitals have significant cash flow, they have significant expenses. And increasing the level of charity care that they're expected to deliver will ultimately lead to some real adverse consequence for the financial sustenance of that institution, whether it's Maine Medical or the hospital in Lewiston or Bangor.
Yeah.
They're the ones that really are going to have sleepless nights moving forward, because they're structured to deliver care. Their professional ethic is to do so. The passion of their staff takes pride in being able to meet that challenge, and now the rug's being pulled out from their patients, and they're going to be left trying to navigate the delivery of healthcare services that they know up front will never be paid for. No private business could sustain that model.
Right, right. So in going through your talk, I came across some issues that I really didn't know much about. One of them was your review of the streets, one-way streets, all kinds of streets, and people. You said in your speech that neighborhoods are concerned about speed problems in their neighborhoods. Tell us about that.
From my time at the Portland Police Department, which is decades ago now, to today, traffic safety, pedestrian and vehicle interactions remain one of the top issues in the community. And we've had a recent spate of pedestrian fatalities at intersections. But I mean, going into neighborhoods, what's the first thing they want? They want speed bumps or modifications to the roadway itself in order to reduce speed. And some suffer from the idea that it's others from other communities or neighborhoods that are racing through the neighborhood, and then we do traffic enforcement. It's really their neighbors. And the more familiar you are with the street, the more likely you'll drive fast and almost unconscious to the terrain. You're just so used to coming down a particular street. It's very mechanical. There's not a lot of intention there. So we've done a lot of traffic calming. We've now adopted something called the Zero program, which is to really be intent about complete streets. Let's not repave or restructure, but anticipate the type of pedestrian activity that'll be there, bicyclists, cars, trying to slow things down, trying to make people more aware that it's a shared space. Once upon a time, roads were considered primarily for automobiles, but now we have new partners that make use of that same area. So we're moving in that direction. People actually want the police to give more tickets. We've raised the percentage of tickets by almost 40%.
I was amazed. You've made it a point to up enforcement against
Yes.
speeders and traffic issues and so forth. And I was amazed. You said in your state of the city, 875 police stops of people in neighborhoods operating vehicles. That's a lot.
It is a lot, but it's kind of curious because some residents will say, well, that's not enough. And I go, can we gather 875 items, tangible items, and put them on a table? You'll see it's a lot. It's a pretty big number because the police is sometimes answering, over 1,000 calls for service in a week. So to carve out time to take a post, to do traffic enforcement is no minor task. You're diverting resources that could be doing X in order to address traffic safety. And what I've told the chief and the city managers, it's a priority. It's what the public expects. We'll see as we increase the number of tickets. No one's called, by the way, to say I shouldn't have got the ticket, so I'm pleased about that. I'll probably hear from the court first as they try to manage traffic court with this wave of tickets coming in. And other communities have a reputation for having a higher priority for traffic enforcement, but they don't have a similar demand for general police services that Portland does. So it's a balancing act.
Is the Portland Police Department still understaffed?
Yes.
Is it seriously understaffed?
Well, we're down about 27 officers. That's pretty significant.
Why people don't want to be as many people don't
Well,
want
let's
to be?
watch the news. Is a young person going to look at the news and say, that's what I want to do, when they see the public criticism and the attack on the institution, the constant idea that somehow the police begin in the negative. You know, we just awarded the fire department a proclamation for their exceptional work on the Custom House blaze. The governor came down and gave an award as well. I'm proud of our fire department. They're true professionals. They do risk their lives to protect life and property. But if a cop kicks in a door to go after a presumed felon, okay, there's all sorts of questions about his use of force and why was he there and where was his warrant. Very little discussion about the offender, but a whole lot of attention, and it's usually negative attention. I once complained to my father, who was a career firefighter. We were having Sunday dinner, and I was involved in a lawsuit at the time alleging that I and some other officers had used excessive force.
When you were a policeman?
When I was a policeman. And it's stressful. People don't understand when we get sued, we have families, we have our own emotional well-being. It's a hard journey to get to the end of litigation. And I says, you know, Dad, you save a burning foundation. That's all that's left. And people glorify your efforts. They applaud you. They want to have dinners. They want to donate money. I says, you can't lose. You know, I do my job, and I'm subjected to all Monday morning quarterbacks and questioning. And it's not to say that some of the questions aren't legitimate. I appreciate we need
Sometimes
scrutiny.
there are policemen and people too, and sometimes you get ones that are tough.
But the presumption begins that the police must be the bad actor.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
So I think young people, when they're looking at the landscape of the current economic world, they're making other kinds of career choices, and policing is not.
So you also covered another issue which I found interesting. You said Portland's too dark.
Yeah, it's too dark.
You said a related public safety issue is the fact that in too many places after sundown, Portland is too dark. Tell us about that.
Well, one of the habits that I have is from my police genetic profile. I actually still go out on patrol. I get in my car and I'll pick a district and I just drive around, and if I know folks, I'll stop and talk. I want to see what's out there, what's going on. And one night there was a shooting down on Portland Street, and I happened to have been in City Hall late. It's right up the street, down another one. So I went down and I thought I'd take a look to see how the officers were dealing with the situation and what really was in place. I found that block so dark, and it almost gave permission for illicit activity to occur, and it made it that much harder for the police to do their forensic work. And there was a gentleman there who's a routine voice from the public at the council. He and I started talking about it, and we both concluded it's too dark. So I met with the assistant city manager and the director of public works, and I said, as I'm driving around, I took pieces of streets around the city and said, go there at night. Let's not do it in the day. Go at night and ask yourself, is this safe? Like one of the ones I pointed out was Washington Avenue from Cumberland to the entrance to Tukey's. It's really dark in the evening, and you have a lot of patrons for the businesses just coming out from between cars trying to cross to the other side of the street, and they're on their phone, they're not paying attention. I says, you know, if it's predictable, it's preventable. It's predictable that somebody's going to get hit by a car. What are we going to do in response? So they took up the post. The city manager expanded it to a citywide assessment of lighting in the city. And I think maybe 2 weeks went by, and Mike Murray, who's the director of public works, stopped by my office, and he goes, you know, Mayor, he said, I was pulling out records, and he goes, about 20 or 25 years ago, the public was clamoring that we were too bright.
Too bright?
We were too bright. That they wanted the lumens, which is the level of light, turned down so they can enjoy the nightscape. I says, well, it's been long enough. Let's turn them up again, and we'll see if the public goes along with it.
So you're working on a plan to, what does that mean, more street lights or brighter ones?
In these brighter ones, what I've heard from the public too, which I think makes good sense, is we have a lot of light fixtures that are pretty high up in the air.
Yeah.
And they light up an expanse that probably doesn't need all the light when all the activities on sidewalks and the street. they've asked to have us consider what they call pedestrian-friendly lights, which is a much shorter pole, brings all the light down to the sidewalk and to the crosswalk. So I think there's merit to their critique, and that we should explore that once the assessment is completed.
So another thing that you covered was downtown safety and making it a place that everybody feels comfortable using downtown. And you talk about the community policing center at Congress and Elm. I don't know much about that. You have a police office at Congress and Elm now?
Yeah, we took some vacant space there, and we've made it a de facto precinct, to use somebody else's term. And we've stationed officers that are working from that space into the Congress Street corridor on foot to deal with the conditions. There's also, it's a place for our behavioral health unit to have a platform to do their work, because they might bring somebody back for some manner of intake. And we're also going to be adding a new component which will supplement the ambassadors program that has been initiated by Portland Downtown District. That program, the ambassadors, was plagiarized from what's going on in Providence, Rhode Island. Sometimes borrowing an idea is just as good as having a new one.
Right.
And they focus on cleaning up the space to deal with the graffiti, the litter, the food waste, the biohazard waste, the needles. I would go to businesses who complain and show me the discarded needles, and there was no one to retrieve them, because you can't use public monies to mitigate damages in a private space. So we're caught between.
And these are people that own buildings, that have businesses, and they come to work in the morning, and the entryway to their store is filled with used needles?
Needles, human waste, other litter, food waste, just an amalgamation of stuff that they're left to deal with. Well, the ambassadors are not an arm of the government, so because they're funded by the membership fees of all the businesses, they can go into that space and clean it up. So that's been really helpful.
And that has made it, you notice that that's made a difference?
Oh, yes, I feel pretty good, because when I go up, and we still have it. It's not completely eradicated. I think we can do better, and I want to do better, but they've made a significant dent in those issues.
Let me ask you a question. It's always on my mind. When I was a young man, I remember this is in the 1950s, I played American Legion baseball, and every year the American Legion baseball tournament, state tournament, was at Togus, up near Augusta, which is the Veterans Administration Hospital. They had several buildings there, and one of the buildings was for people veterans who had fought in World War II, which had ended just 7 or 8 years before I was playing baseball, and had come out of it with PTSD, what they called shell shock in those days. And many of them were there for a long time getting help, but they had a warm bed, they had 3 good meals a day, they had psychiatric treatment, they had all kinds of things. They had pills, they had physicians. And now we're against all of that. We want them on the street where they can't look after themselves. I don't understand. Isn't a good society a society that looks after people that can't help themselves? I don't get what's going on.
Well,
You might have some
no,
insight.
I get how we got here. I mean, there was a belief that with the deinstitutionalization of AmHigh and Pineland, that those patients would somehow filter back into the community, and there'd be community homes or support so they could live on their own and reintegrate them into their home communities. Well, that didn't happen, right? It's an unfulfilled promise. We'll get to it next year kind of attitude in Augusta. I mean, it takes money and it takes staff in the right communities to do that. So basically, they've been on their own, despite the valiant, heroic efforts by a number of not-for-profits. Letting them to their own devices results in a level of care and attention that we should not accept. That's it. And I know my friends in those professions are going to wince. And through that journey, we've adopted this idea that they're not just patients, but that they're consumers, you know, and like they should have the primary voice in making a decision.
Can't make a decision. That's the problem. They're incapable of making a decision to help themselves. People are impaired. It happens.
It
It can
happens.
happen to me. It can happen to you. It can happen to any human being. An impairment.
I think there's a subtext that the institutions I refer to, AMHI as an example, became viewed as a detention facility.
Yeah.
Like you're never getting out of here. Once you're here,
Yeah.
out of sight, out of mind. I don't think that's the case, and it's really disrespectful to all the people who worked hard to meet the needs of those individuals. You know, no institution's perfect, but I think the premise that some individuals need to be hospitalized has been lost. I mean, one of the central tenets to when I came out against encampments and moved to have them eradicated is my idea was they'd lost the capacity to make a decision in their own best interest, period. Non-negotiable. And the evidence was objective.
Yeah.
The source from the rats, the constant use of needles,
Yeah.
their general well-being, the conditions that they allowed themselves to live in or exist in, if you want to be very candid. And to hear some members of the community say, well, that's a community. I said, that's not a community, and it's not Mercy.
See, that's its community
Their
with the
community.
rats and everything. That's
Well,
nice.
But it's consistent with the idea that we need to do all we can to allow them to make their own decisions. And the mantra is, we'll meet them where they are. I don't buy it. That's
Good for
plain
you.
English. I don't want to be an academic. I'm not going to allow people.
I think it's common sense.
To me, it's slow motion suicide.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, just today, Mayor, I drove down Congress Street. As I passed the building in which we are sitting right now, there's a guy now, it's sleet coming down, freezing rain, it's 25 degrees, and there's a guy sitting on the sidewalk here on Congress Street, laid out on the, okay, just laid out
No.
there, and in the elements. And I'm saying to myself, that's cruel. That's cruel to let that guy to his own devices and let him treat himself that way. And I know there are others who say, no, that's fine. He wants to be out there in the freezing cold.
Well, I don't, although I remember as sheriff, I once offered the gym and a meal and a shower if they brought people in
Yeah.
to our facility. And I was told, well, that's a bad optic, bringing people to the jail. So I says, so the optic you'd prefer is somebody frozen out there. You see, I think sometimes we get caught up in ideology or the best wishful thinking about what someone's going to do. And that's great in an academic setting, but I'm talking real life. People are going to freeze. And if it's not freezing, you can't allow them. I walk by some of those individuals. I mean, they're nodding off from overconsumption of an illicit drug. You know, we're on track to give, I'll wait for the final numbers, but we'll easily hit 1 million needles.
In the city of Portland,
Yeah.
1 million needles.
And I know this doesn't make me, you know, the best liked politician, but I go, it doesn't make sense to me. I think there's some element of enablement that those needles represent, and we've got to bring the number of needles down. Because what I tell the public health people, I get it. You don't want to have the transmission of bloodborne pathogens. I totally agree with that. But I said, I've done the research, and there is no clinical basis for the 100 needle ratio that we're engaged
What's
in.
a 100 needle ratio
If
mean?
you show up and say, I need needles, you get 100. It used to be 1-to-1, which was the perfect standard, and I use that loosely, perfect. But if you came in and you only had 1 needle, no needles. They give you 10. I don't want to discourage common sense medicine. But then it had worked for almost 20 years quietly in the city. And then when COVID came, the administration in Augusta said, well, we want to reduce the frequency of contact by parties in order to prevent that disease. So let's just give them 100 needles every time they come in, and that way they don't have to come in so often. Well, it misses the point of the needle exchange. It's not just to give you needles. We're supposed to be doing an assessment for the potential for recovery. We don't really talk about that.
It's not just giving them a needle. You want to have an interaction.
We want an interaction. We want a face-to-face evaluation by a nurse, by a public health nurse. Does this person need more than just the needles today? I just don't get it. I mean, I want to find the number where we can meet the general public health challenge, no transmission of HIV or Hep C, and that's a moving number. And the idea that I think our primary purpose from a public health perspective is to get people into recovery, period.
People do recover from addiction.
They do. I mean, it's quite a process, and I accept the fact that the effort will be repeated time and time again for some addicted individuals. It's just not a matter of say I'm done.
Yeah.
There are physical and psychological and emotional variables involved. But our responsibility as a government, not just as it should be the state responsibility to say, look, the primary purpose of this entire transaction is to get people into recovery. You know?
Not to make sure that they have plenty of needles. So take these drugs.
Look, I know it's terrible. I ran a jail for 12 years. When they came to us, we would detox. We weren't going to give needles. We weren't going to provide any other kind of drug to them. So the decision was made as a proxy. You come in and you're going to go through detox. And hopefully we can help place you somewhere to continue that process.
So a prisoner at some point who was on drugs at some point could be off for drugs because he does not get in the drugs.
And I
That's
lobby
cruel,
that.
but
Well,
it's good for them.
It's medically managed detox. It's
Yeah.
not. They just don't sit in the cell and hope it's all going to pass.
Yeah.
You know, we try to be actively involved, and to show we had some humanity on top of that, I convinced the commissioners to allow us to provide Suboxone to pregnant females because we had an innocent third party. It was the baby that she was. By nature of that, those were high risk pregnancies. I mean, I ran as much of a hospital as sheriff as I did as a criminal justice holding facility.
A lot of your prisoners, I assume.
Most of the prisoners have either a chronic mental illness, which is aggravated oftentimes by substance use disorder. And the other piece I think that's helpful to consider is many of those individuals were poly abusers. They're just not neatly in the box of saying, I do heroin, or I do fentanyl, or I just do cocaine, or now methamphetamine is rising in its profile. They would abuse whatever was available. So it's a real challenge for medical and social staff to plan a plan of care towards recovery, but it has to be done. You know?
This is way off the point, and it has nothing to do with the city of Portland. But I'm listening to you because you're an expert. You were the sheriff. You ran the jail. You were a policeman. You're the mayor. You've spent a lifetime. You're a lawyer, observing all of these problems. These attacks that the military is making on boats coming from Venezuela, they say they get drugs in the boats, and so this is a fight to protect Americans from drug abuse. And I look at that and say, well, this is a joke. This is laughable because that's going to make no difference in the market for drugs in Portland, Maine, or any other city. The market is there. The drugs will get there even if they're not coming from Venezuela. Am I right or wrong? Or in between?
I wish sometimes that we could get to a quick yes or no. I mean, we are an addicted society. That's my general response, you know, and we have all variety of addiction. So that person you see on the street shooting up is not that far removed from your private addiction, whatever that might be. It's the same mechanics.
Yeah. So
the purveyors of illicit drugs understand that. So that's why they have a smorgasbord of things you can choose from. I guess the proposition I would say to this administration, if you can find them as quickly as you do, and if you have the technology that you can see actually the number of individuals, and even possibly in rooms that you and I don't have access to, have the definition of photography that you can know who's there, then why don't you just have the Coast Guard arrest them? I mean, I still believe in the rule of law.
Yeah.
You know, they're engaged in international crime.
Right.
Arrest them. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll always remember as a street cop, as a sergeant, some people have me in neighborhood meeting. They say, you know that house over there, they're selling drugs. Why can't you just go kick the door in and get them? And I'd spend the whole evening convincing them that that's not how we play ball. Yeah. You know, we're supposed to follow the rules. They're not. But what's the difference between them and the officers is we follow the rules. And that's how they will respect what we're going to do. And when I kick that door, I'm going to have the benefit of a judicial order to do that, and we convict. So, you know,
It's a process, and
it's a process.
Yeah.
This is not a military operation.
Right.
You know, this is a law enforcement objective and responsibility that's been hijacked into a military operation. It shouldn't play that way. If there's a decision that you're going to send special forces into a country to eradicate the headquarters of a cartel, then I think the Department of Justice has a legitimate conversation, and I still call it the Department of Defense, to work out a joint effort.
it will be the Department of Defense again in the future. No question about that.
I don't know. I was reading a book about Lincoln, and he was dealing with the Department of War.
Yeah.
So it's revisionist history once again.
Yeah. Well, when I was a young
to sum
man,
it up,
yeah.
it's a law enforcement problem.
So another major issue, apparently, after reading your talk, and I knew this, is affordable housing. I didn't realize it, a very large number of renters in the city of Portland.
Yeah, we're a city of renters.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I have one of the counselors, he's very passionate about rent control, and there's a rational reason for that. I mean, lots of folks pay rent. And I don't reject the idea there should be some stability about rent payments, but I think what's been missing in the rent control algorithm is the fact that landlords have to be able to acquire sufficient capital from their buildings to maintain the building. You know, you can't do it under the current math. And you have to recognize that when one tenant leaves the apartment for legitimate reasons, not an eviction, but they're going to move on to do something else, then a landlord should be able to recognize the current market condition and adjust the rent for that space accordingly. That's not happening right now either. So I think if nothing is done, in 10 years we'll say rent control was a great deal for those who got in early on the market. But since then, we're going to see a deterioration in the quality of the stock. And I'm concerned about that because Maine, generally speaking, is plagued with real old housing stock. You know, that's really hard to retrofit. So if people are investing in becoming landlords, we have to give them a break too.
And it's the same thing with, I suppose, with affordable housing. We need to build more housing, more apartments to house people, but they cost money to build. I think you said something about it, and you can repeat what you said in the speech. The contractor needs to be paid, the banks need to be paid.
Money costs money.
Yeah.
Somewhere that's been lost in the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, and things have to pencil out.
Yeah.
If you can't make the numbers work for a certain price, then you have to consider the next price. Now, there's a certain project that's going up that's going to be involved in cooperative equity, that there's going to be, you know, a contractual relationship between the city, the tenant, and the managing company, that when they leave, they're going to get a share of the equity, but some of the equity is going to be
Well, tell me to
retained.
describe this with contractual equity. What does that mean? I'm a person, I come to town, I want to live in Portland, so I go to, this place gets built and I go there and, well,
Yeah, you can buy the property and
Yeah.
own it,
Yeah.
and there will be equity that will grow with it,
yeah,
but there's going to be a cap on the equity so that you don't make a killing, you make an honest return.
I don't double my money.
That's right. You don't double your money. And the purpose of that cap is to ensure the affordability for the next
For
owner.
the next person.
So
Okay.
now,
So I get help. I get a break when I buy the place, but then I can't say I hit the jackpot when the prices are way up and I've doubled my money. I said, no, the next person's going to get the benefit too.
it's a shared benefit.
Okay.
And it took the developers about 2 years to work out the financing
Yeah.
behind the scenes, because
So
you got to
what-
convince banks. So
We're building one?
yeah, as a matter of fact, they've cleared the land. It's over on Washington Avenue Extension, just before it connects again to Auburn Street. And it's going to be one it's literally on the Falmouth side, the other one's on the Portland side. But it's going to be a whole community, and it gives a different finance approach. We have to be creative about money, but the city's not a bank. We have to be creative about allowing structures with new materials, but we're not Home Depot or Lowe's. I mean, people expect us, and that's why we have a task force on social housing right now. We can facilitate, that's what we're good at. And we have real competence about being a bridge financier. We can't underwrite a project, but money doesn't always line up on a timeline that everybody appreciates. We can cover the gaps till the bulk money comes into a project. And I think that's really important for developers.
Well, there's a big, I'm glad we have the mayor here. There's a big excavation, a whole city block on Bayside and around Elm Street and that area. Big, huge. Because I went down Elm Street the other day between Cumberland Avenue and Marginal Way. It's huge, the whole block. What's that about? Do you know? The big excavation. Must be some kind of housing development.
Well, there's hopes. That's a pre-approved project, and you see some of it on Elm Street being built right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a company that's building housing,
Okay.
which is going to be very welcome. I pause on this idea of Bayside because we have successfully recovered property that was lost.
Oh yeah. No, when
in
I
litigation.
said Bayside, for those guys from Miami that
Yeah,
the
yeah,
city
that
had
one-
trouble with. Yeah.
That went forever. It's finally resolved. So the question is, what are we going to do that slug of property? What kind of housing?
Yeah.
Some want us to go as high as we can. Some would like to see a two-story townhouse go down there. There's a real cry from the current residents to build a park, that some of the space should be allocated for notable green space as opposed to these little pocket pieces of green that abut multi-unit housing. So that's a debate that's going on right now, is what kind of housing should
Yeah.
go in there. But that definitely be a housing, that'll be a new footprint on that side of Franklin Arterial that I think everyone's going to pay attention to.
And because of demand, I would guess that in the next 10 or 15 years, that's going to get built up.
Oh, it's going to get, listen, right after getting elected mayor, I was in an interview and they said, what do you see in the future? I see a much denser peninsula. You know, we're going to build up on the peninsula and we're going to reconsider the role of unattached single-family units out in North Daring. So, but I think you're going to see Portland's going to become a city. I'm going to steal a comment from our planning director. He says, right now Portland is that teenager who's just looking through the door at what adulthood's going to look like. And I think that's Portland as a community right now. We have such potential to move forward and actually be the city of northern New England. But it's going to cause pain and frustration, and we're going to have celebration, and we're going to have process, and things are going to get animated, you know, like any birth. It's not a quiet event.
Yeah, as we heard when we started this, when we got here tonight at the studio, somebody wanted to know about the big, tall building that's being proposed, and isn't that terrible? And you and I had the same reaction. Cities grow.
Cities grow, or they die.
Yeah, one or the other.
You know, they stagnate. It won't die, but
Yeah.
I really believe in the city. I believe its future is going to be significantly better than it is today.
Is our population grown in the last?
Not really.
No?
I mean, I think when I got here in '72, they were close to 80,000. I could be off by a few. You know, we're down now to about just shy of 70,000. So
But we have a lot of new apartment buildings and stuff.
yeah, let's
How
see
many
if people come to them. I mean, I can't tell you how many younger people say, I have a right to live in Portland. I want to be here. And I go, great. You know, let's build something that can get you in.
Yeah.
But it's going to change. It's going to change thinking. I grew up in an apartment neighborhood in Lewiston, so I was told the American dream was to get my own house. And I remember what a celebration it was when I did purchase one, and I moved in with my wife and my daughters. My daughters are in their mid-30s, late 30s. When we talk, and they live in California, which is always the future.
Are both your daughters live in
Both,
California?
yeah, they live in San Diego County. It was never intentional, but their careers brought them there, ironically. But they're having a conversation, which I think has merit for consideration, is we may be a generation that returns to being tenants. And we're okay with that if the tenancy respects what we need as a family in that space. So we're still living in the 50s version of what the American dream is.
Yeah.
I think the 2000s, or at least the decades moving forward, we may have to revisit what that success looks like. And I think it's about childcare and green space and retail consumption in the neighborhood that's affordable at the local level. You know, everybody wants Deering Center. If I was going to use a model, they want to be able to walk to the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to get in the car and go anywhere. So that's the kind of density we need to consider moving forward, is can we have those elements as part of a new kind of neighborhood, and the social interactions will take care of the rest.
So we're talking about, you know, more urbanization in the city itself.
In the city.
And that reminds me that I hear people say, and I don't think they have any evidence, but you may, that, well, all of these people, we see all the homeless, the people at the time when they were occupying the parks and so forth, they're not from Portland. They come from all over Maine and everywhere else. Do we get a lot of transient homeless
Yes.
in here? We do.
See how quickly I say that? Yes, absolutely. I think if you look at the census for the Homeland Service Center, you know, individuals that we would say have a credible claim on being a Portland resident is about 15%.
15?
Yeah. Why do you think I go up to Augusta?
Well, now getting there. Now that's the next thing. So I then read that you go up to Augusta and you hammer at those people that Portland is taking care of a statewide problem.
It is a statewide problem.
Yeah.
You know, my colleagues across the aisle would tell me it's a problem of your own making, whatever that is. And
You're talking about when you were in the legislature, you mean?
No, now.
Oh,
As I
now.
go out, when I go up there, I have colleagues on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And the ones opposite my party will say, but Dion, Portland created this problem. I go, how did we create it? What makes you think that myself or my predecessors got up one morning and said, you know, we're going to win this race, and we're going to have every homeless person we can find be served here in Portland. And then I show them the census that's been affirmed by the people who are in the center as to where they come from. You know, and many on the Appropriations Committee, their towns were listed. I said, let's be fair. And I says, you've designed the game by statute that forbids me from blocking those that come from the outside.
So
and you challenge us for the cost of this.
Do smaller towns take care of the homeless in
No,
their
they don't
towns?
have the resources. I mean, it's not fair for me to look at, and I'm not picking on them.
Pachios or
Yeah,
Calais.
you can't expect them to stand up a shelter. Even if they built the building, in their population, they may not have the type of staff necessary to run that effectively and safely. I get that. So what I've been telling all these gubernatorial candidates, and I think you and I are not running for governor, is that correct? Can we go on the record?
Well, the two of us are not running for
We're not
governor.
running.
That's right. Right.
Well, when I meet with
We're
these,
rare birds.
we're backbenchers. We're just going to watch this thing unfold. Nonetheless, when I meet with gubernatorial candidates, I said, look, unless you want to inherit this perennial battle between service center communities and the state seeking the adequate funds to meet the challenge that's put on our doorstep, why don't we consider shifting shelters to a county government basis? That way we can draw equitably from communities in the county to help pay for the service and the operation, much like we do for a jail. Nobody wants a jail in their community, but the jail is essential. And when I was sheriff, I'd go around and sell the budget, and people always said, I don't think there's anybody in the jail from Raymond, is there? They go, oh yeah, let's look at the number. And what they were always amazed at, and I was too, it was proportional. I mean, Raymond didn't provide a slew of inmates outside the side of the community. It was just about what you expect, you know? Although once in a while, it was communities like Biddeford. For what reason people that come into the city get arrested. So we had outlier communities that suddenly there was a surge. I remember the former mayor of Biddeford called me up with the homeless issue on his riverfront. He said, I think I have a lot of your people. I go, I don't have any ownership of that.
He said, I have a lot
Yeah,
of your, meaning Portland people there?
Well, he had homeless, so he gave them Portland citizenship. They must all be from Portland, because I didn't have it last week.
Yeah.
And I said, no, you're going to have to try to figure it out with me.
Yeah.
So some of the candidates, okay, that makes sense. Maybe the county is a way to facilitate
So maybe
a reasonable distribution of funding.
so that idea might have legs.
It might have legs, we'll see. But, you know, if I've got to go, look, they said they punished us from Augusta for our expense account in terms of how we pay for the shelter. And, oh, when we go up there, they point out, you know, you guys don't know how to run a shelter. I said, look, those are legitimate expenditures and we'll defend them. And we took it to an administrative hearing, and lo and behold, they had to pay because we didn't step outside the rule. It was the volume that intimidated them. You see, I think there's an idea in Augusta, if you stop paying for these services, all those individuals disappear. Right?
Yeah, they're not,
they
we
don't.
won't see them anymore.
They're gone.
Yeah, yeah.
They'll all, it's like Field of Dreams. They'll walk off into the corn stalks and be gone.
The one thing, I don't think we get transient homeless from southern states up here in the wintertime.
Oh, we get a certain percentage of individuals from out of state, clearly.
You do.
I mean, to be honest, you know, I monitor what goes on in Boston, because when Mayor Wu clamps down, I expect some to head north.
Really?
Yeah, because there's a reputation that Portland won't challenge residency, and we have good benefits, but they make it sound like that was our decision. That was an Augusta rule. We're just the animation of that rule.
Yeah.
Like, all you have to do for residency is show up at Health and Human Services and say, I intend to make my home in this city. Okay, you're in.
Is that right?
That's it. You know?
Well, that's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So It's not difficult for someone to come down from Lewiston. It's not difficult to come from Westbrook.
Don't you think that in a rural community, everybody knows each other in rural communities? Let's say in Machias or someplace in Washington County. So if you've had bad luck and things aren't going well, and you've got a drug problem or whatever, you're better off in Machias, Maine, where you know everybody, maybe, than you are on Congress Street.
Well, they don't have the services to deal with this individual. You know, listen, I got called from staff some months ago because a certain sheriff's office brought an amputee, a female, homeless, from Waterville to Portland. They just dropped her off at the shelter. I mean, I have another police department that drops off their people. One of our budding communities in a public forum said, we don't have the problem. And I wanted to say, well, of course you don't. Yeah. I have those individuals. We're caring for them. Yeah. You know, so I called that sheriff and I says, from Waterville to Portland, what are you thinking? Well, what do you want me to do? We don't have anything up here. I go, I recognize that, but you should take her to a hospital in Augusta and see if they have something that they can do that would be a reasonable intervention and provide a plan of care that makes sense. I says, think how terrified she is. She was in Waterville probably her whole life, and then she's brought down to a shelter in Portland. It's a bit too much disorientation for somebody who has other issues health-wise to deal with. So
and a lot of these people are sick.
Oh, no,
Beyond the addiction, they're sick. How can they not be sick to be out in the street on a night like this?
You know, I mean, my wife's a visiting nurse, and she has clients at the shelter. I mean, they have chronic, persistent disease. A lot of it is diabetes, wound care, respiratory issues. If you're living in the outside, it's to be expected.
That's exactly what I say. Look, Mayor, it's been a pleasure to have you here, and interesting for me because I get a lot of questions answered when you show up here. So thank you very much for coming. We'll do this periodically. I think people like it.